downhill from here. Greetings. My name is Michael Miller. This is a Michael Miller trademark training video out to you because you're watching. Thank you and welcome. It's meant for Michael Miller Pilates licensed affiliates, the Core New Core, and anyone interested in surviving and thriving as a Pilates instructor, as well as anyone that is just in love with Pilates and wants to learn more about this point of view. Okay? Michael Miller Pilates is just one point of view out of 10,000. And so it's Monday, and I had a full list on Saturday because of interaction I had with someone lamenting the state of Pilates, and certainly controls must be put in place, and it's shocking what's out there. You know, those kind of words. And so my number one title out of 9, forgive me, but my number one title out of 9. So if you don't get all of this, just come back later or let it go. Just read the titles. A human being is a coagulation of control. That's pretty obvious where the human being starts and whatever else there is picks up, right? Something very individual. And it is a coagulation of control in that it is a living being, and in this case, a human being. And that's a very specific kind of coagulation of control. But beyond that, what I'm addressing is the coagulation of control that happens among human beings when they assemble into or gravitate into groups. And as such, and defining themselves, are going to define what's out there compared to what's in here, right? And thereby establish some discernment of what the group is versus whatever else there is out there. Human nature happens everywhere in any field or area of interest, methodology, groups form. And a lot of that is out of the interest in taking control, especially if you're in control of who's in or who's out of the group, right? Think unions. To me, what matters is the distinguishing of what makes Pilates what it is versus everything else. And right there is an assumption of, or a presumption of, and profession of, the point of view that there is something there within Pilates in and of itself that you can get out of Just Joe's book. And that comes, an understanding of it comes intellectually and also sensationally. So, number 2. Indignant ignorance. Insofar as the culture being what it is, there's really not that much to base one's indignance upon. It came out of my mouth better than I thought it would. So I got after the word indignant and perceived as unfair treatment we're unjust or unworthy, right? Indignant. And we're talking about dignity, and I'm talking about indignant reactions to what they see within the Pilates tsunami, in which they make a judgment that they're indignant about what that is versus what they perceive it to be. So it's a matter of dignity and association to whatever one felt was of dignity and what you know about Pilates. To associate yourself with something with dignity is a good thing. And when you see something that seems beyond what you understand it to be or think it to be and be indignant about it, because it seems demeaning. And to cause a severe loss of dignity and of respect for something or someone. And so indignant is, it's tough to see some of what's being expressed as Pilates and not feel indignant about it compared to something that you know that what you see doesn't show evidence of. Right? The severe loss, a severe loss in the dignity and respect of something or someone. In the respect of Pilates, right? Number 3 ties into number 2 because in the point of view that you live in, if it's a point of view that doesn't take into account the human nature and its interest and the money behind it, number 3 is, from an MMP point of view, the old way is being swept away, which is cause for the indignation of what you see out there that is so different than your point of view. And so I would go to number 4 in terms of taking a perspective on number 3 as to recognizing, observing that money will make Pilates whatever makes the most money. Right? Money will make Pilates whatever makes the most money. And that will be what is projected and promoted and then left to be perceived as whatever is most profitable. Okay? Now, really, for the next couple hundred years, or a few, while money is honing its product, where they're headed to in their honing is to, I think, my point of view, because MMP is based on reality, and that whatever makes the most money is actually going to be whatever represents the product. Maybe not. But I think if you're going to make sugar, then the closer your product is to being sugar, the easier it will be to sell the presumption that what you're selling is the real thing, whether it's sugar or Pilates. And so in that regard, number 5 is that physics rules Pilates. Okay? You may not like to know that or hear that or need to admit that or care about any of that because it doesn't fit into however you want to apply whatever it is you know about Pilates. Well, don't let that get in your way and go right ahead and go. But for the Pilates instructor that wants to know the MMP point of view, or that holds out the banner of the trademark, I'll at least be familiar with the part of that point of view where Pilates is conditioning, and the conditioning is determined by the physics that it finds itself in. Right? Because if you're going to, and because why? Why? Most of the Pilates culture has no why, and isn't interested in why. Nor will it care until some kind of critical mass is reached where enough people understand that there is a why to be had, and that from that a tremendous amount of confidence and evidently capability in the results you get when you know what you're aiming for and how to hit it within the MMP point of view. Whatever else, regardless of whatever else lives out there. Which takes me to number 6. Number 6. We are in the dark ages of Pilates. Number 6. We are in the dark ages of Pilates. Now, the dark ages came after the fall of the Roman Empire. Okay? So after this huge structure and source of control, power, all of that fell apart into the Dark Ages. And so when I point to the tsunami of Pilates passion as wreaking havoc, if you will, on our presumptions of substance and structure and heritage and meaning and understanding, the Roman Empire and the Pilates culture is the aristocracy and the inherited authority by traditional association, right? Who you know goes back to a lineage, and you're in a generation, which makes you a cell in a spreadsheet. By virtue of the heritage of that, and the money that's part of the wave will make whatever it wants of itself and Pilates along the way to be most profitable. But I'm here to share my opinion that this point of view is based in reality, and that Pilates, that physics rules Pilates, so that ultimately, but not way in our lifetime, the money will be forced to recognize there's something more specific than whatever is easiest to monetize. It's this, remember this needle. It's a needle of a compass. And then over time, all the different magnets of interest that want to make Pilates what they want of it will give way to where the needle ultimately points to that the group of Pilates, that humanity will make of it. There you go. Humanity itself will overwhelm any aberrant influence, because the needle will point to what it is. All right, so bear with me. Physics rules. I'm on. Look, Michael, look. And off of the word reality, I came to the word consistency, because there is a consistency to reality, evidently, meaning there's evidence, and meaning there's data, meaning science, and within MMP cares about the realm of science. And interpreting Joe's book, making a reasoned argument from the evidence in Joe's book, pointing to the ideal that exists within it. And if it doesn't exist, then it's just one point of view that has been a lot of fun for me to feel the thrust of the passion as the artist, as the presenter. And so the fall of the Roman Empire, to me, is the fall of the current aristocracy and heritage and lineages that lead back to Pilates. I think the tsunami wave will overwhelm that, is overwhelming that. And then whatever rises out of that, there will always be the classicist that is clinging to historical reenactment and monetary interests, and also a point of view or an interest of seeing Pilates ideally for the freedom that gives you in your pursuit of it. So, and I think the Dark Ages are going to grow for like the next 100 years. And everybody, out of monetary interest, because they can and will and continue to do so, will group together and decry everything out there that isn't their point of view of what Pilates is, determined by them, to where that's why the group holds the power, and that's human nature. In being swept away by the influence of group interest, let it not be lost that Pilates is human being conditioning for whatever comes next, right? And in that regards, historically, after the Roman Empire fell, it was the Dark Ages and all of this chaos. And so out of that chaos came the Renaissance. And so that's why I think that the Renaissance of Pilates will be ideal. It'll be the ideal that's evident within Pilates, that more and more people assimilate on their own or get to, that then allows the recognition of Pilates and in recognizing it for what it is, able then to build upon it in whatever way one wishes to. There's knowing how to paint reality, and then there's knowing how to paint abstract, and generally to get any credibility, in my opinion, in the abstract, that's just way off the band. That's not true. It's not my opinion even. But I was making the point that some artists, say Picasso, could draw in detail reality before he went off into abstract. And for me, knowing the capability to represent realism lends more credibility for me to the abstraction presented. Why? Because there's a basis or a capability or a construct, a connection to what seems real, to where there's an interest in perceiving or opening yourself to what's abstract. And in that regard, okay, the MMP points an ideal point of view of Pilates. And that'll either be part of the tsunami wave and disappear, Pamela Coleman Smith, the artist that depicted the primary imagery in the most universal deck of tarot cards in the world, faded into I'm afraid of saying the wrong word. Having lost track of history, lost track of the artist. So, number 9. And it came to that number with the title being Still Moved to Hold Out the Lantern. And that's imagery from that tarot card deck I'm talking about, where the hermit is isolated on the peak of their experience that has built them up from the Valley of Innocence into the peak of their point of view, your point of view, my point of view. We are all isolated on the peaks of our experience, and the choice is whether or not to hold out a lantern from there or not. And this is me saying thank you for listening. And so I'm still moved to hold out the lantern. And to me, the lantern illuminates two things, right? What two things? Well, it illuminates core new tension, meaning oppositional rotation between axes, and that engagement makes sensational alignment and more uniform engagement to make the body lighter in space. The second thing of the two things, core new tension, and then the ideal within Joe's work. I could have spent, and maybe should have spent, a lifetime just focused on core new tension, because it is most uniquely my art as opposed to Pilates. You could say it's just an obvious thing that exists within Pilates, but I identified core new tension because of my pursuit of Pilates, and yet core new tension is just biomechanics. That helps to know about if you're trying to be a Pilates instructor. And after what? After uniform engagement, right? So my My summary on all this, without going through it all again, is that for most of my career, it goes by, and it's interesting, this presentation of core tension and such, but it only goes by as though it's no big deal. But to me, it's kept me involved this long, and the big deal being that no one's identified oppositional rotation between axes in the body. Maybe that's because no one has pointed out that the core is a literal grip at the hips, and that as such, that's one axis of rotation within the body that the body uses to move through space. Control. I started out talking about coagulating control and just looking at existing unions within the Pilates culture, right? Identify what unions you know or belong to, and probably in order to get a better rate on insurance, which gives you a sense of relationship between being able to practice, having insurance, and what group you associate with, because it's much easier to get insurance that way. And so, you recognize how that structure is. And so that if you really are teaching contrology, which is what Joe called his method, it's about control. And the control I'm trying to point to here is that as a Pilates instructor, it's all about helping our student or students do the work. Gain the experience of complete coordination of body, mind, and spirit in the pursuit of the choreography, because the choreography is the conditioning that you perform is the conditioning that you perform in preparation for whatever comes up next. Okay? So if you're in the middle of teaching a private and a small human being came in, seemed small at the time, with a bill of lading and asked if I could help him unload whatever it was. It showed up as like 500 pounds as a crate on the list. But I didn't know that at the time, and I go outside, and from the middle of teaching Pilates and preparation to needing to be completely in my body to bear half of the load of this crate that had a Cadillac in it, right? Not a car, but a heavy piece of Pilates equipment. So control for the individual to respond that way, but then control as a subject goes beyond the individual to when the individuals get together in groups and try and by establishing a group defines in here from out there. Recognize the value. Recognize the value. Be willing to say you're a Pilates instructor and leave it at that. So in other words, and this is a good place to end this. Sorry it took so long to get here. There will be people tell this to others if you don't already know it. There will be people that will think they're going to ask you questions about Pilates and arrive at a satisfactory answer. And so they pretend like they just lift your head open and they start asking questions because they're coming from their thinking, and they're thinking, they want a thinking that you can resolve within thinking. And because you and I know within the point of view of MMP, it's observing that has to be part of it, to actually get the experience of the essence of what it is. And that's what takes you to a very quick, pull the lid back on your head and say, really, you're not going to get an answer from me intellectually. You just have to try it and see if you like it. And if they say, well, why is that? Well, I don't know, but that seems to be the case. So anything that I would attempt to do to explain to you what it is won't be enough. It's in the doing that you find the answer that you're looking for. There you go. That's a good Zen way. It's in the doing that you find the answer that you're looking for. I hope I remember that afterwards. It's in the doing. It's in the doing. Why is that? It's because it's in the doing. I need my digital recorder right here. It's in the doing that you find the answer that you're looking for. So that's Pilates. And as an MMP instructor, you know that that's because you need observing as one of the human capacities that is coordinated with the thinking and the being. Right? Life can't live forever. Read between the lines. See behind the curtain. Add 2 and 2. Direct your thinking. Geist.